Hello and welcome to Top Story. He held Britain's highest office for 10 years. Since then, he's brought his energy to the daunting task of promoting Middle East peace. But Tony Blair seems to have an even more challenging international portfolio in his sights. The role of European Union President has yet to be created. But Blair has already made what looks like a pitch for the post, which would replace the EU's current system of rotating presidencies with one powerful figurehead. It's a key component of the Lisbon Treaty, signed by European nations last month. Politics is no longer a matter of left or right, it's about the future versus the past, Blair recently told France's centre-right UMP party. He got thunderous applause and backing from President Nicolas Sarkozy, who will oversee the process of setting up an EU president. But is Tony Blair the right person for the job? To consider that, I'm now joined by Yves Gazot, who heads the European Commission's representation in France. Mr. Gazot, thank you very much for being on Top Story.
Good morning.
What is Tony Blair's appeal in Europe? What does he have going for him?
Well, he's a prominent politician, you know, I think it's if he's candidate for this job, he would be one, of course, of a major, I would say, contenders for the job. So there is no doubt about it.
Because he's seen as someone who's charismatic, or what's
yes, he has been, you know, he's in charge of a very important country of the EU. He's charismatic, he's young, he's dynamic. So I mean, I'm sure he will be one of a very good candidate for the post. There is no doubt about it.
And I mean, he got this great reception when he addressed the UMP and backing from President Sarkozy. Interesting that he should get backing from the centre-right when he's a Labour.
Well, as you know, some of the French right side is quite close to the Labour Party position. So it's, I don't think in terms of economic views and expectation, the Labour Party in the UK is very different from part of the UMP. But if I may, I think all this, I would say, discussion and so on may be a bit premature because there's a long way to go and there is some obviously striking agenda. For example, we have to ratify the treaty first.
Okay. Just before we get on to the process itself, I just want to stay with the issue there in France. We saw him addressing the conference of the UMP. He's a divisive figure, though, even in France, some figures on the right and the socialists also say that he's not the right person for this job.
Well, it will be the same for other candidates, I suppose. No, you cannot please to everybody, so that's for sure. No, some arguments concerning Tony Blair or against Tony Blair, I would say, taking the post, is that the UK is not a member of the Euro because of the opting out policies of the UK and so on. But you can also reverse the argument. You may say if you have, let's say, a UK national as an EU president, he may also bring more, I would say, sympathy of the EU in the UK. So it's you can use the argument both ways.
Although Gordon Brown is a very different political animal, and but still, the thing is, now you mentioned the Euro and the opt-outs, that this has fueled an idea about Britain as being outside Europe and not really a fully fledged member of the European Union. What about the Iraq War? I mean, that's been a very divisive issue for Blair's potential candidacy.
Yes, that's true. But again, I think it's a discussion will take a long time before we reach the point of nominating a president. So I think the pro and the con will use arguments for candidate X or candidate Y. And again, I think it's just the start of a process, I think.
Okay, well, let's talk more about the process. I mean, there's still a long road. Can you explain the different stages for us?
I think it's very important because first we have to ratify the modified treaty. If everything goes well, we may end the process by early 2009. So it's after that we can say, yes, now we can really implement what is in the treaty, like, for example, nominating a EU president. Then you'll have a parliament election, EU parliament election in June. And as
June 2009.
And as you may know, the nomination of the European Commission President, Mr. Barroso, today, will be based also on the results, according to the treaty, of the EU Parliament election. So I think it's why I'm saying it's a bit premature, because we have a series of elements. First, ratification of the treaty, then European Parliament election, which will condition one way or the other the nomination of a EU president.
Now, supposing that the right wins those parliamentary elections, the European Parliament elections in June 2009, that would mean that a centre-right head of the European Commission would probably be appointed, and therefore a left-wing President of the European Union, which doesn't play in Blair's favour.
It is not that compulsory, but
it's the tradition.
And the treaty says no. The nomination of the EU Commission President will have to take into account the result of the Parliament election. So, if it's the right win at the Parliament, logically, as you say, it should be somebody from the centre right, or the right would be the Commission President. But it's not compulsory again, it's just an indication, because we want to avoid a kind of, if you like, of a discrepancy between the head of the Commission and the majority of the Parliament, of the EU Parliament.
So we're seeing a potential showdown between the European Parliament, which wants to show its independence, and on the other hand, the French presidency with Sarkozy pushing for Tony Blair, quite possibly in the second half of this year.
Well, on the French side, I think they are playing, which is right, I think, on a kind of smooth way concerning the treaty ratification. So they are saying, and they are thinking, and I hope it will be the case, by the way, that the treaty will be ratified by early 2009. If it's the case, then of course we have to, the member states, when it will be the French in the presidency seat, will have to start to propose names concerning the EU presidency, the EU head of commission, and the high representative for external affairs. So 3 names will have to be, or well, 3 posts will have to be fulfilled, and names will be at that time, second semester 2008, will be proposed or discussed among member states.
So still a long road ahead.
It's a long road, and also don't forget that with a kind of job condition for the EU presidency, it should be a full-time post.
Yeah.
It should be somebody who is from national obligation, and 2 years and a half job with a second term as a possibility.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much. Yves Gazot, do join us for another edition of Top Story tomorrow at the same time.